Today at Wilwood Disc Brakes, we're going to show you how easy it can be to upgrade your Mazda MX-5 Miata's brakes to our forged Dynalite front big brake kit. Before we begin, it's very important to read through our datasheet instructions designed for your application to verify brake lines, wheel clearance, and look for any variations that may have taken place before or after the vehicle left the factory. With the car properly secured and the front wheels removed, we suggest taking some photos of the current setup for reference if needed. Here's the 1999 Mazda MX-5 Miata we're going to install the kit on. Remove the two caliper mounting bolts. Slide the caliper off the rotor and hang the caliper out of the work area without putting pressure on the brake line. Slide the rotor off the hub. Using a wire brush, remove any nicks or burrs on the axle hub and upright that may interfere with the installation of new brake components. Clean and degrease the axle hub, dust shield, and caliper mounting bosses. Orient the caliper mount bracket as shown and install using bolts and washers. Place a spacer on each bolt between the bracket and the caliper mounting bosses. Ensure that the flanged heads of the clench nuts in the bracket are facing outboard. Temporarily tighten the mounting bolts. The bracket must fit squarely against the mounting bosses on the upright. Inspect for interference from casting irregularities, machining ridges, burrs, etc. Remove bolts one at a time, apply red Loctite 271 to the threads, and torque to instruction specifications. Orient the rotor and the hat and attach the rotor to the hat using the supplied bolts. Apply red Loctite 271 to the threads and using an alternating sequence, torque bolts to instruction specifications. Slide the registration ring onto the axle register on the axle hub with the smaller OD facing outward. Slide the hat rotor assembly onto the hub. Install 3 lug nuts finger tight to keep the hat rotor assembly in place while continuing with the installation. Mount the caliper onto the caliper mounting bracket using bolts and washers. Initially place 2 shims on each bolt between the caliper and the bracket. Always use the same amount of shims on each of the 2 mounting bolts. Temporarily tighten the mounting bolts. The end of each bolt must be flush or slightly protruding from the head of the clench nut. If necessary, place spare shims between the washer and the caliper mounting ear to achieve proper clench nut engagement. View the rotor through the top opening of the caliper. The rotor should be centered on the caliper. If not, adjust by adding or subtracting shims between the bracket and the upright. Once the caliper alignment is correct, remove the bracket mounting bolts one at a time, apply red Loctite 271 to the threads, and torque to instruction specifications. Install the disc brake pads into the caliper with the friction material facing the rotor. Secure the pads in place using cotter pin. Using PTFE tape, install the fitting into the caliper. Screw the Flexline into the fitting on the caliper and tighten. Connect the bulkhead fitting to the Flexline. Disconnect the factory hardline from the factory brake line. Remove the OEM retaining clip and save it as it will be reused. Remove the factory caliper and brake line. Slide the bulkhead fitting through the bracket and reuse the OEM retaining clip to keep the bulkhead fitting in place. Attach the hardline to the bulkhead fitting. Be sure to clean any brake fluid that may have spilled. Double check all your work for safety reasons, and when ready, perform a full system fill and bleed with new Wilwood brake fluid best suited for your application. Be sure to check again for sufficient wheel clearance and follow the directions for proper bedding of pads and pedal feel. Contact a professional if you encounter any difficulties or have any doubts or any questions.